And I'm going to introduce our great speaker for today. As you know, we're going to talk about the sales funnel. And I think that some of you had the pleasure to be in other sessions with David. But let me tell you that David is the CRO and co-founder of Comunidad Feliz. And he is going to talk about all about the sales funnel. If you want to participate during the presentation, just open your mic. Let's make this session very dynamic. And David, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to let you to start the session.
Thank you for the invite. It's always very humbling to give these presentations. I think a lot of you guys may be further along that the material that I prepared, maybe someone will be like before the material that I prepared, but I always try to do very dynamic presentations. So I encourage you to ask questions. I encourage you to interrupt me. I encourage you also to challenge me. That's very important too. If you see something that you don't like, so we can nurture the discussion. So I'm gonna start with the presentation. Everyone sees it correctly, right? Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I'm David Peña. I'm the CRO, Chief Revenue Officer of Comunidad Feliz. I'm a computer science engineer. So for me, from the start, it was a little bit weird because I'm a computer major. So I'm a nerdy guy going into sales, which is weird. But as an entrepreneur, you do whatever you have to do to get the business running, right? So to explain to you a little bit about Comunidad Feliz. Comunidad Feliz is software for building management. You have all the features for communication with tenants, residents, everyone in the building. You have online payments, so you can pay HOA fees, rents, etc. And for the administrator, you have all the financial tools to do reports, accounting, and payroll in your building or condominium. So we started like the beginning of 2016, at the end of 2015, we started acquiring clients. 2017, we did our first round. Then we scaled a little bit to 1,000 clients and 100 clients in Mexico. Then we did an equity round of 2 million. And right now we are at 4,000 buildings, 500,000 properties in 8 countries. And we're closing some new deals this year, but I cannot put it as a milestone yet. Okay, so the sales funnel, I'll try to do the best talk ever, but I had a problem while I was organizing the presentation. You guys are the build generation. So there's a lot of disclaimers that I want to do before explaining what's a sales funnel and how you can build one for your company. So the first disclaimer that I like to do in these talks is the survivorship bias. Who knows it? Maybe you raise your hand. We have here. Okay. Yeah, people know this. So the survivorship bias, I think it should be a disclaimer in every entrepreneur talk ever, because it's basically the story of after the battle in the Second World War, the planes that got back from battle went to the engineers, and the engineers were like, okay, which part of the plane should we reinforce so we have a better advantage against the enemy? And if you see the planes, those red dots were the points where they got the bullets. But obviously, these were the planes that came back. So the engineers were like, we should reinforce the red points. But the actual pilots were like, no, we should reinforce the other parts, because the planes that were shot in those parts went down. So that's the survivorship bias. And normally when an entrepreneur talks, they have a lot of ideas, they have a lot of advice that work for them, but they work for them. That doesn't mean that it's gonna work for everybody. And one example of this is, should you start selling in many countries, or you should be the leader of one country and then move forward? So in the left, you have some examples of companies that from the day one started selling to many countries. Corner Shop opened in Mexico and Chile almost simultaneously. Simple Route from year 2 were in like 17 countries or something like that. And it worked for them. But on the other side, you have companies like Fintual that try to be the best and the leader in one country and then move forward, or paperless, that it's the first company that started doing online invoicing in Chile and was sold for $100 million. And they only have Chile as a client. They had clients like Falabella, Ripley, big companies, but still one client. So that's survivorship bias, and I think it's a good disclaimer because a lot of the things that I'm gonna say work for me, work for other entrepreneurs, but maybe won't work for everybody. And the other disclaimer that I need to do is that when we talk about services or products, I'm going to talk about monetized products. So I'm not going to talk about free pilots or companies that have a free business model or a free business mindset. We're going to scale in usage, we're going to scale in users, and maybe 5 years down the road, we're going to start selling or charging the clients. That's not going to be the center of the talk. And here, one of the things that I do a lot in these talks is recommend things that you can see or read. One of the biggest recommendation is the Y Combinator's YouTube channel. It's amazing. I've seen almost all the videos, and they say something very true. Is the best feedback about your service you're gonna get is 3 seconds after you tell the client the price. So you shouldn't be afraid of that, and we're gonna focus on services and products that we actually charge clients. So there's the link. I'm gonna share the presentation afterwards if you wanna click on that. Okay. Second of all, I think it's important to talk about why we're selling. When we started selling in Comunidad Feliz in 2016, after the first year, one of our clients, a building administrator, sent us gifts on December because it was Christmas. Basically, he started in January with us, managing one building, getting an income of like $300. And we finished the year, him with 5 buildings. So instead of $300, he started earning like $1,500. And the message in the present was, the Christmas of my children is better because of you guys. And that's the thing you have to have in mind. Like, we're not selling because we're going to be millionaires or create unicorn. I mean, probably you guys want to be millionaires. Probably I want to be millionaire too. But that's not the center of why we're doing this. We're trying to get to more clients because we know we're going to help more clients. We're going to help more people. So that's the first thing before we started talking about business and money and prices and funnels and stuff. Okay, so sales funnels. I promise you I'm about to begin talking about sales funnels, but before we start about sales funnels, one of the things that I would like to say for the build generation is it's maybe you shouldn't be learning this yet. Okay, what do I mean about this? One of the key messages when you're starting Y Combinator is do things that don't scale. What's that? Like, you should just start doing something. Like the people in Airbnb had this idea that the images, the photos of apartments on the web on other competitors were awful, suck, like worst photos ever. So they went in New York, they went with a professional camera and they started taking photos of the apartments themselves. Obviously, this didn't scale. It's impossible to do that for 1 million apartments worldwide, but you can do it for 1, you can do it for 2, and if it works, you can start replicating. So if you have a product, if you're worried about sales funnels, maybe just go and sell. Just do it. Like the message from Nike. Just start doing it. Don't think about it that much, and you can just go. And a message that it's very, very true in startup is that if everything seems under control, you're not going fast enough. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that don't want to kill the market because they don't want to go with a pricing model, or they don't want to go with a sales methodology that's going to kill the market. Normally that doesn't happen. You can mess up with 100 clients and you're still going to have 10,000 million other potential clients. So if you think you're having everything under control, probably you should be going a little bit faster. And the other thing is, don't try to invent the wheel. When you're going to sell, there's like 100, 200 years of documentation on how you sell products, how you sell services. And as Steve Jobs said, good artists copy, great artists steal. And he actually stole that quote because it was actually Picasso who said, good artists copy, great artists steal. So don't try to invent the wheel. If you're going into a market, you can just see what's the competition doing and try to build up from there. Okay, funnels. We're about to begin. Just very few more slides, but we're about to start. What I would say is that many in the build program may be thinking, do I have something to sell? And the hint here is yes. Even if you don't think you have something to sell, you have something to sell. And I'm gonna talk about this a little bit. It's a lot of entrepreneurs come at me at, I'm building an MVP. Stop saying I'm building MVPs. You have to start saying I have a product, I have a service, and start selling from day one. How can you do this if you actually don't have something? I don't know if there's some software engineers here in the room, but there's a methodology called test-driven design. I don't know if you know it, but it's basically do a test that doesn't work, then program your code for it to work, and then do the refactoring for everything to start working. So for test-driven design, I have a metaphor for selling. It's called sales-driven design. So for this, you basically sell something that you may not have yet, then you panic, then you try to build it, then you package and price it, and then you do the cycle again. This is sales-driven design. Even if you don't have something today, you don't need to have it to deploy it as a sales pitch to potential clients. I'm going to give examples of this. Comunidad Feliz started with a sales-driven design. This is an actual proposal that we did for a major real estate company. To the left, you see features that we didn't have. It's funny that some of them, we still don't have them, like 6 years after this proposal. But we said, if you pay us the amount on the second part of the slide, it was like $8,000. If you pay us that cash, we're gonna build this in 8 weeks. And if we don't do it, we're gonna give you the money back. That was the deal. So even before we started spending time programming, we started selling. That's the example for Comunidad Feliz. That's maybe not that sexy, so I have more sexy examples. Nubank. Nubank is the huge bank, online bank created by David Peña. Warren Buffett just sell a bunch of MasterCard stock and bought a lot of Nubank stock because it's the future. Online banking is the future. But in 2014, when they're starting, it's funny that they said they presented an idea that no one else in Brazil had ever seen, but it was basically a credit card. So MasterCard credit card with smartphone features. That was it. If you think about it, it wasn't really that of a disruptive product. And for the first year, they had 200,000 people put their name in the Nubank waiting list. So they didn't even have that yet. So they just created a value proposition that seemed very, very sexy. They deployed it to everyone, spent a lot of marketing, and then they had 200,000 potential clients in a waiting list. So they didn't have something, but started selling anyways. And I think the most famous example, I don't know if you've seen the story of Microsoft, but Bill Gates, there's link there to the entire story. Bill Gates told IBM that Microsoft could do operating system for their computers, but he had nothing. And down the road, he just bought a very simple operating system from a company for $75,000. So selling in these cases, it's way more important than actually deploying one product. The disclaimer here is that it's very important at the beginning when you're just starting with the limited resources and probably at the point of many of the build generation is, but you can have it and you can do it. Start selling even if you don't have something to sell really. Okay, now we're gonna start with the first step before creating your funnel. I don't know if you have questions about what we've talked so far. Nobody has raised the hand or anything. Okay, If you have any questions, it's okay. Maybe I'm very clear, or maybe you're just either bored by me, but it's okay. Okay, first, when you're starting to design your funnel, the first thing that you have to try to think about is how am I going to sell my product with my objective in mind. So here's an example from a very famous blog. It's 5 ways to build $100 million business. And there's 2 axes. The x-axis tells you how many clients you'll need, and the y-axis tells you how much you're charging every client. So the intersection in the animals, it's how many clients you'll need to get to $100 million in revenue a year due to how much you charge per year. So flies are clients that you charge very low amounts. So you'll need a lot of them. So the numbers of clients key, because if you need a lot of clients in the hundreds of millions of clients, you probably won't have a sales team. It's impossible to have a sales team if I have to sell to 1 million people a month. Impossible. For the other extreme, you have elephants. Probably if you need to sell millions of dollars to one company, you'll need a salesperson that's very specialized in that niche market, and you'll have to create your sales funnel, sales process based on that. Using the examples of the previous section, I put the tiny heads our examples in the graph. So for the example of Nubank, you may have flights, right? 200,000 people in the first year. It's impossible that David Velez, as an entrepreneur, was like, hey, I saw you were in the waiting list. Impossible. So you had to create something that's self-onboarding, self-serving, probably tutorials, probably videos, a lot of that. David, me, Comunidad Feliz, it's like in the middle. It's a rabbit or maybe a deer, because we charge around $10,000 a year per client. So I can have salespeople, but the funnel needs to be very lean. I cannot spend too much on acquisition. And then you have deals like the Bill Gates deal. He's sold to IBM and skyrocketed the company immediately because it was millions and millions of dollars. So this is the first recommendation: 5 ways to build $100 million company. Super, super cool and famous blog. Okay, if you have that, you have to start growing, right? To start growing, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of things that you should be worrying about. And Chamath Palihapitiya was the first growth professional in Facebook. A lot of people said that he invented the term, but I think this growth section is going to be for the future. You have to have it in mind, because you need to think about how your SEO strategy going to be in the future, how you're going to invest in SEM to the Google ads, Facebook ads, etc. But for the beginning part, I think the growth model or the funnel, it's kind of old school. So right now, most of marketers, most of salespeople are talking about the flywheel. And one of the examples that I like more about how you do a flywheel, like the evolution of a funnel, it's in the Sales Acceleration Formula by Mark Roberge. He's a Harvard professor, and he was one of the first growth managers in HubSpot. So this flywheel basically tells you 4 stages of how you should design your process. It's 1, demand generation. Here there's a lot of documentation, inbound, outbound. You can do a lot of things to create demand. Then you have a sales process if you need it. Obviously, the self-serving clients like Nubank, they're not going to have people selling, so it's a little bit different there. Then you have the customer success. Today, in the service era where you are paying monthly, probably with your clients, you need promoters, you need the aha moment, you need people that move your brand organically. And that's the last part: referrals, expansion, and cross-selling them. So to talk about the first stage of what you should be designing, it's the demand generation. I would say that for the first years of your company, you just should be focusing on high tempo testing. Here's an example of hacking growth of Sean Ellis. Sean Ellis was one of the first growth manager at Twitter, he didn't have what you would call a silver bullet strategy. So not one thing helped him grow. We hear these stories about Dropbox and the referral program. We hear these stories about Facebook and having the relationship status. And those growth hacks helped the companies skyrocket. There's some stories that are true, but most of the times, it's not one thing that helped the company grow and create demand. It's just like a bunch of little things all are rolled up together. So the first thing I would say to create demand, the first part of your funnel, what you call the top of the funnel, is just to do a lot of experiments every week. Just be very, very fast. There's a saying, the perfect is the enemy of the good. So you have to go with the good strategy and try to execute as much tests as you can every week. There's a methodology to rank your test. The methodology is called ICE. You should have listed all the ideas that you're going to have to create demand, and then put a grade on the ICE system. ICE stands for impact, confident, and ease. Impact is what's going to be the impact if this idea goes well. The confidence, how confident am I that I can execute this idea well, and the ease is how easy is the idea. So you put numbers on those three verticals, and then you can rank all your ideas. Always focusing on trying to execute as many as you can. So that's for the first demand generation part. When you go through the stages of your startup, maybe these ideas are going to be less effective than, let's say, outbound, or let's say a sellers program for international countries. But for the first part, I would focus on those, on executing very, very fast and a lot of things in a short time period. Okay, for your sales process, hire, train, and supervise. If you need, I have two examples here. First, if you need sales teams, and second, if you don't need sales team. So if you need sales team, you're the sales team. So cool. You have to become, or someone in the founding team has to become an expert on selling. Nobody sells better than a founder. Nobody knows more than of the market than a founder. Obviously, you should be training and everything, but for the beginning part of your startup, you should be the one selling, meeting with clients, and trying to become the best at selling your product or service. And one of the things that I realized when I started selling as a computer software engineer is that the successful sales process is not what you see on TV. The successful sales process for a salesman is maybe the client enters through a campaign. He leaves his data, phone, email. You send emails, he doesn't respond. You send another email, he doesn't respond. Maybe you call him, he reschedule. You call him again, he reschedule again. He books a meeting, but he doesn't show up. I mean, it's very frustrating. But after that, he sells, he pays you something, and when you get money for what you're doing, it's so cool. But you have to experience it, because after that, when you do hire salespeople, you're gonna have to be very empathetic on what the salesperson is doing, what the client is needing for the sales process to work. So a lot of these stages may work for your company or not, but obviously setting up demos, setting up quotes have to be time restricted. So I'm going to send you a quote, but this quote is valid just until Friday. After that, it's going to be more expensive. And all of these steps, you should be tailored to your company specifically. And for the service, or like the deers, if we use the animal metaphor, the sales people with the marketing team should be very aligned on one North Star metric. Normally it's ARR, annual recurring revenue, but you should have these SLAs, these service level agreements. If marketing is going to create a lot of prospects or a lot of potential deals, sales need to be on them, hopefully before an hour. So someone is interested in the company, in the service, in the product, someone in the sales team should be calling within the hour. Obviously, there's a lot of more stages and KPIs that you can have, But for me, these two are key: driving demand and contacting that demand. And for the self-serving part of the class, there's a lot of products that are just single feature. Here in the United States, there's one called Seago, was acquired by Payless, that the only thing that you do with this product is pay your rent. So you onboard your credit card and you pay your rent. That's it. And they manage over $6 billion a year, something like that. It's unbelievable what they do. And for these kinds of funnels, for these kinds of processes, I think the best method is the Canva method. I don't know if you know, Canva is a design tool that has many use cases, huge amount of use cases. You can have videos, you can have images, you can even print presentation cards. It's unbelievable the number of use cases that they have. So I could be talking the entire hour about this, but I'm just going to leave you with a takeaway. Canva implemented a very successful SEO strategy that not only drives traffic to the top of the funnel, but actually pushes visitors through the funnel and turns them into users. This is totally self-serving. Here's the URL for the website. I think it's one of the best growth cases on the entire internet. So I really recommend you to read it. They're geniuses. Okay, so that's for the sales process if you have a sales team or you are self-serving product. And the third part is probably the most important part when you start to scale. It's the customer success team, creating the promoters, the aha moment, and stopping churn. It doesn't matter if you're driving a lot of acquisition if you're not retaining them. That's basically what I'm talking about customer success. And the marketing team, the sales marketing team with the customer success is what's gonna give you gold. This is gonna be the team that's gonna have to be the stars of your company. As marketing team with customer success. And here's an example of people working together in the Chilean Olympiad, the first, I think, gold medal that we earned in Chile. For analyzing this data, you'll have probably the first KPI is going to be retention. I say first step because it's the first thing that you have to be measuring if you're selling, if they're staying on your growth loop. So here you have a lot of potential KPIs, is active users, ramification of the functionalities that they're using, people that are transferring into promoters. So you have to be measuring NPS, and it's good to have it like on the cohort analysis. So every month for us, it's a cohort. So the clients that we onboard on January, how are they doing on December? Or the clients that we onboard on February, how are they doing in January? And all of those are going to give you an image of how it's evolving. Probably you're going to have a lot of churn for the first clients, but that needs to stabilize. If you stabilize your churn, you're going to have a good company. That's super basic. And another thing that you have to do, especially if you raise a round of capital, is always be checking for market fit. Something that I've seen a lot is that you can drive traffic and acquisition with money. If you have VC money, you can have a lot of clients. I've seen if you hire good salespeople, they can sell ice in Alaska. So you're gonna have acquisition. That's something that you're gonna have with money. But after that, you need to be checking for market fit. And one of the questions that Sean Ellis from Growth Hackers, I think very smartly did, is how would you feel if we can no longer use the product like tomorrow? If your company goes bankrupt tomorrow, how would you feel? One, very disappointed, two, somewhat disappointed, not disappointed at all. This is the check that you need to see if you're selling an aspirin or if you're selling a vitamin. A nice aspirin cures a pain. A vitamin is just nice to have. So super important before you start spending a lot of money on acquisition. And for the more sophisticated stages, when you're already growing, maybe a year into it or something, I would really recommend to read the book Customer Success. They'll give you some rule of thumb for churn, for acquisition, and how important it is to drive those numbers up. Super good book. Okay, that's for customer success. And we're gonna go with the last part. Is basically retention with activation, it's a bigger impact on growth than just selling. So this is very intuitive when you see it this way, but if you have to spend more money in some stages when you already have market fit, if you already have market fit, you should be worrying about retention and activation. Improving retention and monetization normally drives a 2 to 4x impact on growth than if you focus on acquisition. And it works for all models. It works for ads model. Facebook beat Friendster, beat MySpace because they have better retention and better monetization. That's it. Zoom subscription models, transaction models, also like Uber or Mercado Libre, and also works for premium models like Spotify, MailChimp. There's an amazing talk called the 3,000 Companies from SaaS Stock. I leave the link on the bottom. It's unbelievable talk about what you should be focusing on when you already have market fit. This is some examples of how your flywheel may look like in the future. Obviously, you need to be obsessive, have to be very optimal with your resources. If you're creating leads, which one of those leads are qualified, which one of those leads are selling, which one of those leads that sell are becoming promoters and are referring. And hopefully everyone is looking at the same number. That's something that happens a lot when you have different teams. Is different teams focus on different KPIs, but you should be having one indicator. And here is the net annual revenue, net annual recurring revenue added. You have new ARR that's probably coming from sales. You have expansion ARR that's probably coming from customer success, and then you have churn. There's an unbelievable talk by David Peña called the Business Model Metrics. I really recommend it to see it too, because you can get as sophisticated as you want with this process. You can have different stages for the types of clients that you have. So SMEs is very different to high-end clients. You can have different stages on the top funnel if you're nurturing your clients. So you can have even like product qualified leads. That's the very famous PGLs. That's very famous today in the literature. So you can become as complicated and as fancy as you want. But in every step, it's better to go fast than to be perfect. As I said before, the perfect is the enemy of the good. And I'm just gonna close with, you never have to forget what you're selling. I give you an example from 2016. This client that sent us presents in Christmas, and it happened this year too. I got married this year, and some clients sent to my house some presents for my wedding, some chocolates, some greeting cards. I think it's something that's very from Latin America, is that we don't like to be sold. Like, we don't like people selling us. We like to buy, and when we buy to people. We don't buy to brands. So that's very important to always focus in that we're creating relationships. We're just not making money to be millionaires. Although you can be a millionaire too, but we're not in it for that. Thank you very much. That's me in Halloween, and there's my email and my number if anyone wants to reach out. I'm very happy always to help.
Awesome. Thank you, David. We have a question from Juan. I don't know, Juan, if you want to open your microphone and say it out loud.
All right, thank you. Hi, David. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
As you mentioned, if I understand well, we shouldn't talk about the MVP instead of a product, but keeping in mind that we're still in the way that we are finding our product channel market fit. So at the beginning, we, the founders, are the ones that we are going to make the sales process. So my question is, when is a good time to to start, or is recommendable to start to talk about the funnel, because one thing that we are going to do in this process of selling at the beginning sales is that we are still knowing and understanding the sales process of our product in the customers.
Okay, great question. I didn't talk that much about product market fit, because for me, I have a somewhat of a counterintuitive recommendation about that. I put the slide of Y Combinator because Y Combinator has an entire talk about product market fit. And when you have product market fit, according to them, basically you have a lot of money coming in the bank, and your product is breaking because people are using it. And you're always very stressed because you already sold things that your product may not have. So that's for Y Combinator product market fit. It's not usage, it's not use cases completed, it's not a great NPS even, because if you have a great NPS with people that are not paying you, that's very, very cheap to have. So for starting to talk about funnels, you need to have those criteria met. I mean, it really doesn't make that much sense to create a sales force or to create a sales funnel if you're not having clear signs that you have a lot of demand or you have a lot of people needing your product. So I would really recommend you to watch that talk. And if you don't have a lot of money coming in from clients, you should have that first, and then going into creating the funnel.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question.
Antonio, you can go with your question.
Yes, thank you. Hello, David. Can you go to the slide of customer success of retention? Because we've been selling now for 3 months, and we are focusing on our retention rate because we think that it's not very good. We are in 44%, but I was looking at your table and it's not that bad, at least compared to you. What is a good a good benchmark of that KPI? I know that it depends on the industry, it depends on a lot of things, but more or less to have a sense of an approx.
It's a great question. At the beginning, having any clients be retained, it's amazing. I mean, if your product is breaking, if you don't have all the features, if you're very lean on the construction of your product or service, it's any retention is good retention. That's why I show the retention rates there. What's I think very important to think about is that that's not the way you'll create a company. Right now, our retention rate is 99.6. So we have a churn of 0.4%. It will always depend on how you set your industry and everything. But if you see this book, here's the story of Salesforce. On the first year that they sold $100 million in that year, they sold $100 million in that year. They had a churn of 8% a month. So 96% a year. And they were selling $100 million. So when they were selling $100 million, that's when they started to looking at maybe we should be having better customer success. So that's an extreme case. That's probably normal companies would go bankrupt if they have that situation. So it would depend on how much cash you have on the bank. It would depend on if the churn reasons are true or are just because your product sucked. And it would depend also if you have the correct process. If you have a lot of cash in the bank, maybe you can still push a little bit the acquisition, still having bad churns, maybe. If you have questions, we call them objections. If you have objections on the product, there's real objections and there's just because your product sucks. So real objections would be if you have a financial product, your reports are worse than my reports in my Excel. That's very normal. So you can fix that. If it's because your product is having errors, like 404 errors and things like that, you can fix that. But if you're having churn because I didn't see the use of your product, that's scary. That's very dangerous. That's why we recommend the question from growth hackers. The clients that are using your product, you have to ask them, like, we're going bankrupt tomorrow. What would happen? If they say, damn it, I will be so sad, let me pay more or something like that, that's good. That's very good. And for the process, I think all the onboarding in Latin America, it's a little bit harder than in the United States. I was talking with this person from Salesforce the other day. Oh, I don't think I told you guys, but I'm here in California. I'm in Palo Alto. I'm living in Silicon Valley for like a year now. So I was talking with this person from Salesforce, and they said that Salesforce did awful in Latin America. Like very few companies have Salesforce because Latin American people need to be taken by the hand and like walk through the onboarding process. And Salesforce doesn't work like that. It's very DIY, like do it yourself. So you have to check those three verticals to see if you're good or not.
Thank you. Very clear.
We have a question in the chat from Veronica. Veronica asks, do you have recommendations for selling to a massive B2C audience? You can't always track one-on-one.
Oh, B2C is hard. I was in a talk here with the NFX people. I don't even know that fun, but if you're B2C, you should go to the NFX website and read everything. If you're B2C, read everything from NFX. NFX it's an early stage fund here in the United States, and it's called Network Effects. Because the only scalable way to sell B2C, in my mind, in my bias, obviously I'm biased, is to have network effects. So probably you got to most of the companies that are B2C that you use day to day because someone else told you, hey, I'm doing this, like use it. I went into WhatsApp because someone is like, hey, are you on WhatsApp? And no, I'm not on WhatsApp. What's WhatsApp? Okay, I'm not on WhatsApp. And the same thing with Facebook, same thing with almost every B2C product that I know of. In Chile, I don't know if you know Fintual, but Fintual has this like huge mark, like ask your daughter what's Fintual, something like that. That's very cool because it's driving network effects. So network effects can be referrals, network effects can be sharing things online. Like I don't know, pay my bills through this service. You can do it too, and that drives clients. But I think network effects is the only way to scale a B2C product.
Thank you very much, David. Yeah.
You should read
B2C...
everything in NFX, everything.
Thank you.
It's the Bible for that.
So Priscilla, you can go with your question.
Okay, hi David, thank you for the presentation. I don't know if you mentioned it, but how do you detect a qualified lead? For example, I know that, for example, a registered user for a B2C is a qualified lead, but for example, in a B2B or other indicators for a B2C, thank you.
Okay, that's a huge thing. It's hard to qualify leads. So there's more, but you basically have three ways of qualifying leads. You can qualify a lead by a product, like product qualified lead. So you can give demos in your website and see the statistics of what they use. Like he signed up and used feature 1, he signed up, used feature 2, feature 3. And when he gets to feature 5, then someone has to call him because that lead is qualified by product. Then you have marketing qualified leads. These are initiatives that are from marketing, like ebooks, webinars, maybe surveys. So we do that. We do MQL a lot. for potential clients, we ask them what you call progression questions. So the first landing page, it's only your name, email, and phone. That's the first thing. Then if you like the ebook, maybe you go to a webinar. In the second landing page, you have like, are you in need of a software for building management? Yes or no. Then on the third landing page, you'll have like, how much do you pay for homeowner association fees, el gasto común? So we gather a lot of data through progressive formula. And when you have 5 or 6 hit points in those questions, then it's a marketing qualified lead and it goes into the people's funnel. And then you have the SQLs, the sales qualified leads that are qualified by people. So this is the less scalable strategy. But if you're selling an expensive enough software product, maybe scale for your company, where someone warm calls you. It's not cold calling because you already sign up for something, but maybe you didn't file all the questions. Maybe you didn't answer everything that we asked you to. And it's normal. You don't want to ask 100 million forms. So that person calls and he has to hit those points. He has to ask, are you using something for your building management? Do you have a budget to do this? So these kinds of questions are very used in the sales qualifying lead. There's a methodology, it's called BANT. It's very old, so I don't know if I recommend it that much, but it's you have to check if the client has the budget, has the authority to buy, has the need for the product, and is the correct timing for him to buy. That's the BANT methodology. It's very old, but it works.
Thank you, David.
So Elmira asked in the chat, David, can you give more info on differences between LATAM and USA customers?
Yes, there's a lot. I mean, for the acquisition, I think the biggest one that I've seen, biased obviously, is that Americans have a better do-it-yourself mindset. So you need to have websites with a lot of videos, a lot of self-onboarding, self-serving characteristics. And in LATAM, you need more people. Basically, you need more people helping clients onboard. I think that's the biggest one. Something else, I will say that a lot of people think about Latin America as like one country, but for me, that doesn't really make sense because every client has a lot of differences. So if you think about LATAM, you should be thinking about like Brazil or Mexico, and maybe Mexico and Colombia are a bit similar, Chile, Uruguay, Argentina. So there's a lot of cultural differences between the countries that we serve to 8 countries, and we've seen a lot of cultural differences between those countries. And I think in the United States, it's a little bit different because in the United States, you can drive traffic, you can drive acquisition because of the need. Only the need, like the self-serving products are pay your rent. And that can be working for the 300 million people that are in the United States. Pay your rent in Latin America, for example, it's going to be different in countries where they have a lot of credit cards, like, I don't know, Chile or maybe Brazil, I don't know. That in countries where most of the transactions are done by cash, like Mexico. Mexico, the biggest payment channel is OXXO, the supermarkets. That's the biggest cash channel. So there's a lot of different in culture in Latin America. It's not just one country. And obviously, the third part, I think, is the pricing. Pricing in the United States, it's fixed. This is the price. This is the website. If you buy it, good. If you don't buy it, just go to hell. Like pricing, it's just fixed. In Latin America, we're very good at negotiating. Very, very good. So the negotiation goes super differently. Okay, it costs 100. Let me pay you 20. Yeah, okay, no, I'm going to charge you 80. I'm going to pay you 60. And that's unthinkable in the United States. Like it's the price. There's no negotiation, and in Latin America we have to play a lot with negotiations. I think those are the three key. Obviously, I'm taking a lot of things out, but I think those are the three key things.
Awesome. And I think due to time, the last question is going to be Alejandro. So go ahead, Alejandro.
Hi, David. Thank you for the great insights. I got one question regarding experimentation on the funnel, because right now we're experimenting and changing a lot of variables each week, but sometimes experimented gets hard. Or if you can recommend any books or software for experimenting fast, and so seeing those results and taking action based on those results instead of only hunches.
Alejandro, you're the guy from the growth? Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, for experimentation, okay, so it has to go fast. Okay, so you already know the ICE methodology, you already know this. So would you recommend any book or?
Like, for example, A/B testing.
Yeah,
I
know.
Website. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but what I would recommend to you is again, I mean, probably you already read it, but it's the 5 ways to be $100 million business. Okay. Because when you're experimenting, you should be experimenting on the levers of the funnel. There are the best levers to drive sales. That's called like funnel optimization. And it's very different to have a lot of experimenting in the closing part of the funnel, like to close deals, than to drive demand. So I would say that it's hard to experiment across the funnel. I would tell you that it's easier to experiment vertically in one side of the funnel and then moving forward. Because when you go to the end of the day, like the end of the month, and if let's say you have a 10% increase in sales and you have experimentations in all the stages, it's going to be hard for you to know which optimization was the one that drove those sales. Yeah. So I would organize it like that. Okay, we're going to experiment this month of this sales cycle. I don't know what's your sales cycle, but for us in Mexico, it's 2 weeks. We pay, basically we do it every 2 weeks, and in Chile we do it every month. So every sales cycle I would only do experiments of top of the funnel. The next sales cycle I would do only experiments on nurturing the funnel, like the middle of the funnel. And the next sales cycle I would do only closing experiments. And I would try to do it a lot, like many experiments on those sides, because optimizing every stage, I think it's more important than optimizing it horizontally. For examples, I think the Sean Ellis book is like the Bible of examples. I don't know where you say it, but the Sean Ellis book, Hacking Growth, gives you 100, this book, Hacking Growth, Sean Ellis, 100 cool examples from uTorrent, Dropbox, well, obviously Twitter, and gives you a lot of examples of cool things that you can do.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. And David, it was it's a key element in the cycle for the startup. So thank you so much for coming to Startup Chile with this topic. And thank you guys for all the participation. You know, this session was recorded, and I'm going to ask David if you can share this slide to us so I can share it with the guys. So happy Friday, guys. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.